Hello, Year 5, and welcome to Wednesday's English lesson. So today we are going to have a look at everything that we've done in the last 2 days with our show don't tell for setting descriptions, and we're going to put it together into a paragraph setting description. Now, the way that I've done this is on our slides, I've got all of the pictures that we've used for the rest of the week so that you can go back to them, you can add ideas to them, you can remind yourself of your other ideas. We've talked a little bit about some of the features that setting descriptions should include, and I've given you an example one. I've tried to link it to our topic because it would be helpful when we are writing on Thursday and Friday to be able to use some of these features. So let me share my screen and share our starter activity with you. So can you add a fronted adverbial of time to add extra detail to this sentence? So something, comma, the church bells rang out across the sleepy village. So can you add a fronted adverbial of time to add some extra detail to that? So pause the PowerPoint and have a go at doing that first of all. Okay, let me share a couple of examples that I came up with. So every morning the bells rang out across the sleepy village, or if you wanted one, this is sort of a fronted adverbial of time because it does tell us what time it is. With 9 loud gongs, the church bells rang out across the sleepy village. So that's a really nice way of explaining that there is a church in the village without explicitly needing to list the buildings that are there. And it gives us that sleepy village as well. It gives us that adjective to describe it. Okay, so here are our setting examples that we might want to use. Now, I've given you all some feedback about the vocabulary banks that you've built. Please don't feel like you have to just exclusively use them. Go back to my videos from earlier in the week and go through them. Use the internet, use whatever comes into your head. The vocabulary banks from earlier in the week were just a starter for you, and this way if anything else comes into your head, you can use that. We had some amazing vocabulary to use it. I think Lucas came up with describing the mountain as having a mossy chin, which is lovely personification. So have a think about how you can add that in. Another example is Ingrid described the houses as German style, and we talked about how we could pick a particular region of Germany and say that the houses were built in the Bavarian style instead, and just make it just a bit more precise as well. So use all of them. And here are your two pictures of medieval scenes so that we can show instead of telling what era it's set in. So have a look through these examples and decide on the bits that you're going to use, and always come back to these as well. It's really important to use that visual representation wherever possible. So how can we create imagery in a setting description? There are a few different ways that we can do that, and these are the sorts of things that I'm looking for in your work. So we could use similes. An example of that is the river was smooth like glass. A simile is where you're saying that something is like something else. So that's a really effective way of showing imagery. A metaphor is similar to a simile, but you're saying that something is something else. So if I said, I'm going to use the river again, the river was a silver ribbon, I'm saying that it is something else, even though it's not. Adjectives and expanded noun phrases. So that's where we're using adjectives to add extra information. So I'll use Ingrid's example. So the Bavarian, Bavaria is a region in Germany. The Bavarian house would be an example of an adjective. An expanded noun phrase might be where we say the Bavarian house with the sloping roof. We're adding that extra information. And that sort of comes under using detail as well. Show, don't tell, we've talked about a lot over the last couple of days. It's where instead of just listing it was the year, we're trying to show that with evidence. We're trying to really immerse the reader into that area so that they can really picture where they are. So hopefully we will be able to see lots of examples of all of these. Another one that you might want to use is personification. So to use Lucas's example, the mountain stood with green moss growing on its chin. Now, mountains don't have chins, but we're giving it a human-like quality. Things like the river danced over the rocks as well, or even things as simple as the birds sang or the trees stood. That's all examples of personification because you're giving them human characteristics. So let me read to you what I came up with for this, and then I'll highlight some of the bits that I thought were quite effective in there and that create imagery as well. I've tried to make it in the style of the preamble at the start of the legend, where it's quite informal and it's almost a precursor to the story. So, if you happened to find yourself on the rolling banks of the Rhine River, which is, of course, in Germany, you might follow its meandering course and come to a vibrant forest. From under the leafy canopy, you might hear in the distance the tolling of a church bell. And if you headed towards that sound, strolling through the flowers like jewels in the meadows, you would find yourself in the idyllic town square of a sleepy village called Hamlin. Nothing much happens in Hamlin. You may be waved at from the top floors of cosy chalets with their wooden shutters flung open. You may nod and smile at people washing their clothes where the river dances across the rocks. You might even rest your weary feet at the local inn, listening to the sounds of the children playing with hoops on the cobbled streets outside. And yet, Hamlin hasn't always been this way. So you can see I've tried to go for that slightly informal tone, tried to include some ways of showing what the destination is like and some ways of showing what the era is like as well. So let me show you the bits that I highlighted. So I've used a relative clause in that first sentence, which is, of course, in Germany. That, of course, as well tries to keep with the informal tone of the preamble. Meandering course, vibrant forest, leafy canopy, that's all quite detailed adjectives that we can use, and it's quite specific. They're interesting words. I've got a simile with like jewels in the meadows, some more adjectives with idyllic and sleepy. Got a range of different sentence lengths as well. Nothing much happens in Hamlin. There's a nice short sentence that's put in the middle of the two long flowing sentences. I've gone for a rule of three as well with you may, and you might. Weary feet, local inn, cobbled streets, all of those build that picture in our heads of what the area is out like and what the location is like. Now, your job is to have a go at putting all of your ideas that you came up with earlier in the week and writing your own setting description. Feel free to use as much or as little of mine as you want. And remember to keep going back to the pictures so that you've got that visual representation to help you. I'm really looking forward to seeing these guys with some of the ideas that you sent me for your vocabulary banks. I think these are going to be excellent. And you should be able to use them on Thursday and Friday when we come to do a sort of shared write about our own version, our own innovation on the legends for our model text.